All right, so just explaining a few basic concepts for using OBS just to make things a bit more clearer to those users that do want to know a bit more about using it. So in this video, I'm just going to quickly talk about a few sort of the screens and what you can do with them and what they do, etc., so that you have an understanding of how to use them, and then you can use this program for whatever it is you want to use it. But at least you'll know, you know, as the youngsters say these days, at least you'll know wagwan. Yeah, at least you know what's up. So on the left hand side, when you open up OBS, obviously I'm already showing you this now because I have this display capture working. It's just so that you can see the screen, but this would normally be blank. And if this is your first time using it or you've never used it before, your left hand side screen, your scenes, will also be blank. One cool thing to say about this is this: if you have multiple screens, so you've got the ability to have more than one screen, you can actually detach these. And you can move them to wherever you can move them on the screen, like you can put them in different places on the actual screen itself, or you can move them to other screens so that you have more of a visual of your, say your actual cameras, etc., the preview on this end and the program, or this is what's actually going live on this end. So on the left hand side, if you use OBS, that these two boxes here will be where you're doing quite a lot of your work. There are other options behind them, but this is where a lot of your work will be happening. So you've got your scene, and then you've got your sources. Now, the way I like to think about this is this. Your scene, if you think about producing a movie or an advert or a clip or whatever, they're produced in scenes. And different scenes have different purposes, so there'll be different backgrounds, different characters, different props, different etc., etc. This is a broadcasting software. So think about your scene in that same manner. What's happening in this scene? This will help you with formulating ideas of what you want to put in. And it'll kind of make sense because, you'll see some people saying, well, should I add a new camera on this scene or should I add it on the next scene? Should I put this on this scene? But if you sort of think about it in the sense of you're creating a production, and this is broadcast software, what do you have in this scene? If you're on the news, for example, and you have a situation where you've got, I don't know if you've ever actually seen when they zoom out at the end, you'll realize that, the guy who was doing the weather is literally standing to the side, and then the guy who did the sports or whatever is literally on a desk that's right there on the same set, but it's to the side, and there'll be different cameras on the different areas, and then the main two people that are there right there. That's three separate scenes with different cameras on them. They don't usually use the same cameras for the same scenes, etc. But if you think about things in that way, obviously when you're watching it and the guys are doing this, like I said, OBS is a broadcast software. So you're pretty much doing what these guys are doing on television on a day-to-day basis, only on a much smaller scale. But thanks to modern-day technology, the power of computers, etc., we can produce similar content to what everybody else out there is doing. So if you think about it that way, it might help you get a better understanding of how to utilize the tools that are in front of you. You're not just thinking, I just need to follow these 6 steps that this guy gave me. You're actually operating with some level of understanding as to what it is you're actually doing when you're operating OBS. So yeah, think about your scenes in that manner. And then on the right-hand side, you've got your sources. And as I explained earlier on, once you think about your scene, what items do you need for that particular scene is what your sources are. Things like your props, etc. So when you pick a new scene and you call your scene whatever it is you want to call your scene, this is why OBS lets you name it, because you can get as technical with this as you want, or you can keep it as basic as you want. But if you ever want to do recurring stuff where you're always going to be coming back to that scene, you don't want to have to set it up every single time. So you can simply just do, like you can see on my side, I've got quite a few here. But if you're in a church, for example, and you have certain announcements you want to make, you can preset certain things in place, and then once you need it, You just quickly type whatever it is you need and then transition it across. And then when you're done, take it away. You become a bit more efficient at what you do. And you always know I've got my announcements tab. All I need to do is change the words. I've got my scripts tab. I've got my this tab. I've got my that tab, my this scene. And I just change whatever I need to change, transition it across, and bring it back. So that's what you're thinking about when you're doing your scenes. And again, as I mentioned, on the right-hand side, these are the items that you're utilizing. Now, the creators of OBS, being the creators of OBS, have the right to pick and choose how they want to name things. For example, if I wanted to name some of the items here, so you've got image and you've got media source. Image is bringing in an image, obviously, we all know that. But media source is bringing in a video. Now, if I was going to name it, if I had image, in my head, the most logical thing to call the video would be the video. But these guys decided to call it a media source. It's not something you need to go away and Google. Why did they use a media source? Is this some sort of a technical term? It's not. You're not required to go that deep. It's just what the creators of this software decided to call these items. So once you know what media source actually means, next time you need to do this, you just pick media source because you know media source means video. I think you can even import GIFs as media source. So it's not necessarily a video, though it is, but it's a GIF. Moving images. Let's put it that way. But they didn't use video. You've got image and then they haven't put video. Naturally, when you're thinking about these things, you'd think, hey, video. I want to put a bit of video in. Why isn't there? And that's what they decided. We're not going to argue with them. They've given us this software for free. We're very grateful. But just knowing what the different items are here, audio input capture, if you want to bring in a source of audio, say from a USB, etc., you can utilize that. Browser, if you've got an internet page open, you've got window capture, you've got video capture, you can bring in text on its own. There's various things that you can bring in, and you're not always going to use all of these items that are here. Some items you're going to look at them and think, okay, this does this, I'll never ever need to use that. So you can lose it. You can just leave it alone and just carry on with the things that you do, and just get good at utilizing them. Practice whilst you're, at home or whatever. It's a free software. You can download it on anything. So not on anything, but your home computer, and practice. Get better at your trade. On the right-hand side is your mixer. So this is to do with audio, okay? So you can control video stuff from here. But if you want to control audio, if you've got separate sources of audio coming in, you'll have more of these bars. Now, normally OBS has this laid out like so. I'm a live sound guy. This doesn't make a great deal of sense to me, and I don't like having to scroll up and down. I know I can fit more if I do it this way, and I can see what I'm looking at more easier. So this is more easier on my eyes when I change that around. But just knowing simple things, right click and practice, experiment with things that you have there. Go into the advanced properties. Figure out why you have to turn this to monitoring in and out, and what these these tracks are for. For those of you who've had feedback when you've got multiple sources of audio and then the mic is picking up something else, you'll learn very quickly how to utilize these and how to get rid of that noise when you don't want one source of audio interfering with another and creating feedback on your stream. For example, here I've got this down mix to mono. Now, the reason why I have it as down mix to mono is because I'm using a stereo USB preamp, and it's just understanding that the stereo USB preamp, if I plug something into channel 1, will give me audio on the left, and if I plug something into channel 2, will give me audio on the right. So this USB preamp allows me to have both items running at the same time, but it automatically pans the sound sources, one to the left and one to the right. So if I had this on stereo, and I didn't have it as down mix to mono, what would happen is you'd only be able to hear me now through the left. But because I have it down mixed to mono, even if I then do stereo, I have to remember to untick that because it'll down mix everything to mono, which means you won't be able to hear panned audio. You'll just be able to hear it in mono. And if you don't understand the difference between listening to things in mono and stereo, just go on YouTube, type differences between listening to things in mono and stereo, and you'll hear how stereo is much better, much clearer. It's more natural because when we listen to things, and just to let you know what mono and stereo are, mono is when you hear a sound from a single direction or a single source. It's just coming from one area. So if you walk into the room and there's somebody standing right in front of you and they're 5 meters away, if they speak to you, you can tell the direction where they're standing, even if your eyes were closed, because you can hear them from one direction. Stereo just means it's audio or a sound coming to you from different sources. It can be two or it can be more. So again, I could put you in a room, blindfold you, and have 3 people standing around you and just say to you, where are these individuals? You'd be able to pick out where they're coming from, or where the sound is coming from, because your ears can hear that. So when I down mix to mono, we're going into OBS, and when I down mix to mono, what I'm telling OBS to do is no matter what comes in, clump everything into one source and send it out. So if this was a song that had a lot of dynamics and you had say a drummer and the things that are panned to the right and to the left and you have backing vocalists, if you down mix to mono, it's just going to clump everything and just send it out to you. It doesn't sound bad, it just doesn't sound natural or as good as you can get it. But I have to do this now so that everybody can hear me in mono. But I also have to remember to come back here and change it when I'm going back into stereo, because I do have another mixer, which is a digital mixer, which allows me to send in as many sources as I want, so I can actually change that to stereo, which is pretty cool. So it's just understanding a few things about OBS. I'm just doing like a rundown of certain aspects just so that there's an understanding of what's going on. Okay, there we go. So yeah, that's your mixer. Right hand side, you've got your controls. Some of these are self-explanatory. Start stream, stop stream will appear if that was streaming. Start recording, stop recording, studio mode, and what mode do they call this? Anyway, obviously studio mode is where you can actually preview what it is you're about to send across to your actual program, or what's actually being streamed or displayed. You've got a whole bunch of things in your settings. We won't go into that on this occasion because that can be a black hole. People use OBS, for different purposes. So I see these videos where people come on and they'll say to you, oh, if you want to get the best out of OBS, these are my preset settings. Just copy them. You see all these people saying copy them. If you're not utilizing OBS for the exact same purpose as that individual, don't just copy their settings. It might work, on the balance of probabilities, there's an off chance that some of these items will work for you, but the reality is it's not always going to be like that. So just bear that in mind. Finally, where are we now? Then you've got all your sort of transitioning features over here. So you have the ability to determine how quickly you want it to fade across, whether you're cutting, or there's another option in here. There's fade and cut. And you've got sort of quick transition options, etc., to transition things across. So you can mess around with those. Like I said, these are detachable, so you can move them to where you want them to be, for what makes sense for you. If you've got multiple screens, move some of these tools across and just have, these in places where you can easily reach them. But yeah, that was just a general overview of OBS and just getting a sort of general understanding of what things are. The only thing I haven't discussed is what's here in the bottom right hand corner. And OBS will give you certain information as you're streaming, or in this case I'm recording. But But you'll see here, live stream, there's nothing because I'm not actually streaming at the moment. But under the recording, it'll tell me how long my video is. So if you're recording and you want to keep it under or above a certain period of time, then you need to watch that clock and adjust your stream accordingly. Again, you've got your CPU usage. If you've got a less powerful machine, that number will be quite high, depending on what your computer is also doing in addition to OBS, or how much OBS is utilizing of your computer's power. This is important to watch because if that exceeds a certain threshold, it's going to destroy or tamper with the quality of your output. So if you start, or before you start, you realize that CPU usage is high, it's an indication to you that you might have some other programs running that you need to kill. In this case, what I'm going to do, let's see if this makes a difference. Turn my Wi-Fi off. Okay, so not much of a difference. But yeah, if that starts off high, figure out what the issue is, deal with it before you start streaming. Otherwise, it's going to affect your stream. And then the frames per second, if you see drops in frames, again, that's an indication to you that there's a problem. And it all depends what FPS you've picked for your video. But that's just telling you what the FPS is. And if that remains consistent, you're fine. If it starts to drop, it means there's a problem. And on the other end, they're not seeing something smooth. It's sort of coming out and then it's stopping and freezing and disappearing and then coming back, etc. So that's pretty much a general overview of, the screens that you have here, the OBS screen, without going into way too much detail. But you can do some incredible stuff with this application, and it can be a very handy tool. I know people who've made literally millions just sat behind something like this. So yeah, anyway, I'm going to end this video here. Catch you guys on the flip side.